Hey friends, it's Missy again. Thanks so much for stopping in today. I have a new layout to share for Hip Kit Club, and I'm using the 2021 January kits. And I'm going to be starting this layout with a cut file. And this is one of the adorable cut files that are going to be available for February. And if they're not already loaded into the website, they will be soon. So check back if they're not there yet. But I love this big, scripty love word that has this really big shadow, and so I cut it really big, and I'm gonna use 3 small black and white photos kind of scattered around. I think I'm gonna do 1 photo above it and then 2 kind of below it in a crooked way. But I cut this on a sheet of dark gray cardstock that we got, I think it was in last month's cardstock kit. It might have been the Christmas cardstock kit in November. It's a recent cardstock kit, but I wanted to cut it in a either black or dark gray because I love the big shadow. That's the whole part of it that drew me to it, and so I wanted the shadow to look like an actual shadow, so that's why I cut it on dark cardstock. I'm going to use white textured cardstock for the background of the layout, and I'm going to go ahead and coat it with clear gesso so I can do some mixed media on that, and I'm going to let that dry. And then I want to jazz up this love cut file by making it look a little weathered and a little textured. So I'm going to go with some white, I almost said white cardstock, some white gesso, and smudge a little bit of that on top of it. And it's going to lighten it up just a little bit and just give it a little bit of light color in a couple of areas and just make it look a little, like I said, weathered and textured. It's the best few words I could use to describe it. I like when things aren't just one flat color. I like it to look a little, light here and dark there. So I got that done. I'm gonna ruffle up the edges a little bit, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pop this up with some adhesive foam because I want this to kind of jump off the page. And once I get my photos around it, I'm going to embellish with smaller things all around it. All right, so I got that taken care of. Now I can kind of play around with it and see what it's going to look like. And I think this would look good at an angle or straight. I'm going to situate it at an angle, kind of like that, to where it's going up from like the left bottom to the upper right, kind of diagonal there. And I want to color or paint inside the word. So I'm going to lightly trace with a pencil because I don't want to glue this down yet. I want to do my mixed media on the background before gluing things down. So I'm lightly tracing mainly the bottom parts of the word so I know exactly where they're going to go. And I'm going to do a lot of purple today. I did a lot of purple last week on my layout, and I just loved it so much that I wanted to do some more purple. So that's what we're going to go with. And this is the Shimmerz Inklings in Precious Posy. We get that in the color kit this month. And I'm just going to start painting. This is a very shimmery paint. When it's dry, it's so pretty. And I'm going to start just painting basically the lower part. I wanted the lower half of the word to be purple and then kind of fade up into white in the top half. If you saw my layout from last week, I did the same technique on my cut file title where I had the word dream, and I painted the bottom part of the word and then softened it up into white as it got to the top of the word. So it's kind of like an ombre effect. And that's kind of the same effect I want to go for here. I did decide to kind of just let the paint do its thing and see how it went. And I kind of just decided to let the purple kind of run below the letters, and so once the cut file is back on top of it, it's going to look like the purple kind of bled underneath it and sort of came down the page. And I know that this seems like a complicated process. I know a lot of times I get comments of people saying, oh my gosh, I don't have the patience to do this kind of layout. And it does take patience, but it's not complicated. This really, you don't have to worry about it being neat. You don't have to worry about painting inside the lines, so to speak. I mean, technically, I guess I did draw lines and I am trying to paint inside of them, but I'm purposely also painting outside of the lines. I'm adding water so the paint can kind of run down the page, and it's supposed to look messy, you know? It's supposed to look abstract. And that's the beauty of this kind of thing, is that the paint just kind of sometimes does its own thing, and you just kind of go with it and see how it works, and you just sort of embrace the mess, if that makes sense. I decided to add a little bit of this blue Shimmerz that we got in last month's color kit. It's called Oaky Bear Blue, just to add a different variety of purple in a couple of areas, just to make it look a little bit more on the bluish purple side. And in the end, you can't even really tell that I added this blue, because I do wind up coming back in with lots more purple. But right now, most of the paint is inside of the word. But as I go, I decide to kind of, like I said earlier, bring the paint down to where it looks like it's leaking out of the word. And I'm trying not to go above the word, because like I said, I want it to be in the bottom. So I spent way too much time doing that. As you can see, I kept working on it, and I like how that's looking. And remember, the pictures are also going to go down there below the V and the E area. So that's why there's more purple on that side, because I did want some of that purple to kind of show around the outer edges of those two photos. So yeah, without the love on top of this, it just looks like a very weird shape. But yeah, I'm just trying to customize it to fit those letters. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of splatters with the inklings, and I'm going to soften those up by just kind of dabbing them up with my roll of, that's not toilet paper, I almost said toilet paper, nope, paper towels, there we go. Sometimes I roll the paper towels over it, sometimes I use a napkin to dab it up. It just depends on how big the dots are, because I found, you know, when you add splatters, you want the splatters to look like circles and not splotches. So I found that the circles stay in the circle shape better when I roll the paper towels over them instead of just smacking a napkin on top of it. Sometimes that makes the circle just kind of look deformed, and I want it to look like a circle, so that's why I do that. Now this is a color that we also got last month. It's called Christmas Cheer. It's another Shimmerz, and it dries into this really pretty glittery golden color. So I thought that gold elements would be a nice addition with this purple, so that's what I'm going to splatter in now. And the Shimmerz, this is they're all Shimmerz, but this particular one is the original Shimmerz formula, and it's a lot thicker than the Inklings and Creamies, and so I wanted to dab a little bit of that up with the point of a napkin because it's pretty thick. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to go ahead and get my photos layered up here. Now at this point in the layout, I hadn't planned on layering anything else under the photos, but I do like to have some kind of layer behind the photos, so I use white tissue paper a lot for that. If you watch any of my videos, you probably know that I do this pretty much on every layout. I love layers, and I like the way tissue paper is easy to bend and fold and tear and cut, and it's very subtle. A lot of times you don't even really notice it, but it adds a little bit of a subtle layer behind the photos. And I always like my layers to be a little crooked, a little rugged, and the tissue paper is perfect for that. So that's why I do that a lot. I just have a lot of weird quirks that I like to do on my pages. Sometimes I, you know, like with my thread, I don't even know why, I just like it. So I just go with it. I added some adhesive foam behind my photos because I want to pop those up as well. So I'm going to see how this is looking so far. I decide, when I looked at my 3 photos, if you look at them, they're all selfies, of course, but the one up top, my daughter, she's laughing in all of them, but she is looking kind of down, like she crunched into me and looked down. So that is why I put that photo up top, because it looks like she is looking down the page. And I really like to have my photos to where the people in them are looking at something, or they're facing across the page or down the page based on the way their head is turned or their eyes. So that's kind of my thought process there. And the other 2 are just kind of they make sense where they are. At least in my brain they do. All right, so I went through all of the embellishments. I've got a lot of the die cuts. I'm going to use a lot of florals here. I'm going to use some of the die cut florals, some chipboard florals. I'm going to trim off some of the white trim some of the trim on some of the die cuts, because I either want everything to have a white border or I want nothing to have a white border. And sometimes I feel like the white border makes the embellishment a little bit larger and it makes it too separate from the background when I want it to blend in a little bit more. I'm going to cut some flowers from this pattern paper. And by the way, all the pattern papers in the kit this month are exclusive, so that means that you can't get them anywhere else except in the hip kit. So I love that. Yeah, so I'm looking for small things. Flowers, I got that little cute butterfly up top. And yeah, I don't want anything really big because the cut file itself is pretty big. And so now I'm just looking for things to layer in and around that and around the photos that won't overpower anything. I'm going to start to glue things down because nothing is glued down. I'm starting with the little inner pieces of the L, the O, and the E, and I did add little teeny tiny pieces of adhesive foam behind those since the rest of the cut file is popped up. And I remembered that I hadn't added my thread yet, so I'm going to do that before I glue the cut file itself down or any of the pictures or anything. And I've got 3 colors of thread here. I've got that orangey yellow color, I've got the teal color, and then I've got a pink color. Yeah, there are a lot of really cute Valentine / hearts / love cut files that are coming up for February, and there were several that I wanted to use right away, but I just had to pick one, so I went with this one first. And I love cut files like this because you can just make it really big and make it a central part of your design, and then everything else is just embellishing. And it just kind of helps you come up with an idea if you're struggling for somewhere to start. Okay, so now I'm ready to start gluing, and I'm going to start with gluing down all the little bits first on top of the cut file, because it's going to be kind of tricky to lift that thing up and start to add glue because I don't want to remove all the photos. That's one of the harder things about getting everything situated and then gluing, because I just kind of have to be really careful and peel it up little bit by little bit and squirt some glue under there. But I get it all glued down, and then once I have this glued down, I do flatten it out for a couple of hours. I place a big stack of paper that's pretty heavy on top of it to kind of smush it all down, because, you know, the paper does warp a little bit when you do mixed media, and there's a lot of wet glue going on, so I want to make sure that everything is flat. So I took a little break, flattened it out, and now I'm ready to go again. And now that I've got all the flowers and things down, I decided that I wanted to add some pieces with words or phrases. So I went back through and found a die cut that says happy. I found a little chipboard piece that says more of this, and that little piece over to the left that says fave. I'm going to use that. And then the more I looked at it, the more I thought, you know, there's just a lot of white going on. So I wanted to add something behind the photos. And this is something I probably should have done before I, you know, glued all them down. But I went through the Pocket Life cards and kind of cut little edge pieces, if that makes sense, and wedged them underneath the photos. And so it kind of looks like I added some layers, but I, you know, just stuck these in at the last minute, but you really wouldn't know. So I use Pocket Life cards to do that, and I just use my fingernail to kind of rough up the edges there. And so this gives a little bit of a, more of a separation of the photo and the background, and adds a little bit more color. And I'm glad I did that because it just helps the photo stand out a little bit more and adds some more pops of color. So yeah, even after you've glued things down, there's always a way to get something under there, even if you have to just cheat and cut little edge pieces to make it look like layers. But got the job done. Yeah, I like all these little bits and pieces. I think small embellishments are my thing, especially when you're using a large cut file. Like I said earlier, you know, when you have one giant element on your page, it makes sense to embellish with smaller things. And then I took a break again, and I was looking at this page, and I thought, there's just too much white. It's just, I mean, I love my white space, but it's just too white. So I'm going to trim off, or just hack off, some of the edges here, and I'm going to stick it on top of this black and white paper, and I love how that looks. It's just amazing sometimes how just adding something to the edge can totally change the whole effect of the page. And of course, you know me, I like it to look crooked and uneven, so I'm going to ruffle up the edges there. Totally uneven on both sides. It doesn't match, but I wanted it that way. And then I'm going to glue it down to this paper here. This is another exclusive paper in the kit, and I like that. I think it adds something to the background. It kind of just adds, it takes away some of that naked white space, which I love white space, which necessarily, or isn't necessarily always white. When I say white space, I just mean open area. I guess it's called white space, open space, negative space. I don't know. But anyway, my point is the background needed something, and I think that helped solve that problem. Yeah, I'm going to add my journaling down here at the bottom, and I'm not even going to add another title because the love is basically it. It did the trick. It's the cut file, it's the title. Yep, that's it. I'm going to add in some black splatters, and that's another Shimmerz. Did not get that in the kit. That's just from my stash, but you could use any black ink there. And that's it. That's the final layout. I really like how this turned out. Yeah, it was just kind of something I wanted to try, and I think it turned out kind of cute. I like the purple and the gray, and then all those fun bright colors mixed in. And I thought about scrapping these photos in color, but we were sitting in the doctor's office for my daughter's appointment, and the wall was this bright purple. Her shirt was bright orange, and my shirt was bright blue. And so I thought, wow, that's a lot of bright colors for these pictures. So black and white it was, and I feel like it works. Everything kind of just fit together, and I hope this inspired you in some way. Maybe you learned what not to do, or what to do, what you may want to try, or something you don't want to try. You know, that's the whole point of watching all these videos, is to get ideas and to try something new maybe, or to, you know, see how something is done and see all the trial and tribulations of mixed media, because believe me, there are always some of those. But anyway, let me know if you have any questions. I will see you in my next video, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great week.